Hello and welcome to another live edition of the Cyclone Insider podcast and video stream. I am Travis Hines. He's Randy Peterson coming to you from high above Duke Slater Field at Kinnick Stadium, the site of the end of the streak. Iowa State's 10-7 Cyhawk victory, giving them their first win over rival Iowa since 2014. Giving Matt Campbell his first ever win over Iowa, and giving the Cyclones an emphatic start to their season that they have not had under Campbell because of this game. Randy, I think we have lots to talk about. First and foremost, that wonderful hat that you're wearing in these rainy conditions. But secondly,
my rain hat, dude.
I don't know if it was a good football game, but it certainly was a competitive football game down the stretch.
And anybody who thought this game was going to be a thing of beauty, they obviously were wrong. There was no way that this was going to be one of those types of games. This is exactly what everybody knew was going to happen, as far as how poorly or how ugly the game was. Credit Iowa State for coming up with probably putting together the most non-ugly 12 minutes of the game. The 99-yard drive that I'm sure we'll talk about. That in 21 plays, 12 yards, or 12 minutes. But beyond that, yeah, you're right, Travis. It was ugly, but that's the way Iowa and Iowa State were going to play. We knew that. We knew it was two strong defenses, and we got exactly what we expected. I don't think anybody expected a whole lot of points. And as the game went on, it was more evident that it was going to be low scoring because not only because the offenses weren't going the greatest at that time, the weather, it was starting to pick up rain, and it's still coming down pretty good now. But all in all, yeah, it's a big win for the Cyclones nonetheless.
To me, maybe, and again, we're just in the immediate aftermath here. We haven't, had a full chance to digest what we just saw, excuse me. But to me, maybe one of the more impressive things for Iowa State in this game is they kind of walked into Iowa's trap. Iowa wants you to make mistakes, and they're going to capitalize on them. Iowa State made a hell of a lot of mistakes today. 2 block punts, 3 turnovers, a kind of a debacle of a last defensive possession there where Iowa actually got a kick off that could have forced overtime. But here Iowa State stands 10-7, having won the game, having overcome and outplayed Iowa despite all those mistakes through its own determination, through its own ability to make plays and to make Iowa make mistakes. And certainly Iowa's, I think anemic is probably generous to that Iowa offense right now. But for Iowa State to, sort of play into Iowa's hands in terms of their blueprint for victory and still come out with a win, to me, I think is an encouraging sign for Iowa State. Obviously, you don't want to go into a game where you have 3 turnovers and 2 blocked punts. Like, they're going to need to clean that up once Big 12 play starts. But to do all that and come away with a victory here at Kinnick Stadium is, I think, admirable and encouraging if you're Iowa State. Because if you do those things and you lose, like, you are kicking yourself the whole bus ride back to Ames.
And I'm just looking at the stats for the first time now. Total offensive yards, Iowa State had 313. Iowa had 150. That's the way these games have gone. The last 5 or so have gone. Iowa State has outgained Iowa by a pretty significant number, not necessarily as significant as today, but yet Iowa State came out on the losing end of those. Why? Because of Iowa State turnovers. Iowa State could not force an Iowa turnover, and Iowa State turned it over. Well, Iowa State turned it over today, trust me, but yet Iowa State also got turnovers for the first time in a long time. And I'm looking at possession time also, just right now as I'm talking. 38 minutes of possession time for Iowa State. 21 and change for Iowa. That's pretty dang impressive too. And yes, a lot of that happened. Most of that happened with the Dekkers between the third and fourth quarters. But yeah, if you guys have it, if you people watching this have a chance to go back and if you want to replay any part of that game, fast forward to that. I mean, that was, man, he was a maestro. He was spectacular during that drive, and he grew up. He grew up in that during that drive. So, we'll see what it means going forward, because, like you said, Ohio comes to Jack Trice next Saturday, and I'm assuming Iowa State, if any of the players are riding an emotional high, and they did bus over here, I'm sure that'll be gone by the time they get back to Ames. At least, certainly, I hope it's gone by the time they report for practice tomorrow. So, it's really positive for the remainder of the season. Certainly, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game will forever be remembered for that 99-yard drive. Iowa is on the verge of really potentially putting the game out of reach by going up 2 scores. Instead, they fumble it sounds like relatively controversially, via the replay on the 1-yard line. Iowa State takes over, backed up against its own end zone, a week after Iowa just had 2 safeties against South Dakota State, and have the whole length of the field after all the after all the turnovers Iowa State had, a pair of interceptions, a fumble on the goal line. That is a huge spot for Iowa State, because, I mean, like, if you're looking at that drive, Iowa State starting off on inside its own 1, like, who has a better chance of scoring points on that drive, would you have said, given up in that moment? Probably Iowa, right? Like, at that point, you're thinking a safety is more likely than
and Travis,
Iowa State field goal, and certainly an Iowa State touchdown, given what you'd seen transpire for the previous 40 minutes of football.
Interestingly, they figured that because of Torrey Taylor, the best partner on the planet that Iowa has, they figured that there'd be at least once when he would pin him deep, and by golly, that was it. And Hunter said after the game that they practiced that. They practiced this is going to sound weird, but they practiced 99-yard drives, and they piped in crowd noise when they practiced those, because they knew that it would be noisy, and it was. I mean, a lot of it was right down there amidst Iowa students. So I give Iowa State credit for envisioning what could happen, and obviously it did happen. But Dekkers said that drive, they were fully prepared for it. They knew it was coming. And I think you alluded to it, or we were talking about it on the way here, the 6 third down conversions also. So, I mean, man, Travis, we'll never see one of those 99-yard drives this year. I guarantee you that, obviously. And Lord, I don't know if I've seen any, and I can guarantee you haven't.
21 plays, obviously, on that drive. That means a lot of third downs, 6 of them throughout the course of the 99-yard drives. 4 times Dekkers went to Xavier Hutchinson, and 4 times Xavier Hutchinson converted
against a good defense
those third downs, 3 times for first downs, and then ultimately the 8-yard touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone to give Iowa State its first and only touchdown and game-winning touchdown. It's hard to, short of that being the last play of the game or the last drive of the game, it's hard to, I think, script a more dramatic drive in this game. I mean, the rain started coming down in sheets while all this is going on. Really kind of a cinematic type finish or type victory for Iowa State with that drive, the headlining affect.
Yeah, and then I didn't see it because I was in the middle of walking down to the field and peeking in at the game to see what was going on. But wasn't Iowa State penalized?
So this is some inside baseball, or an idea of how strange our jobs can be. At some point, we have to go from up here in the press box down to the field, across the field, up into the tunnel for interviews after the game. It's a long way to go. against crowds, and you got to be there quickly or you can miss our press conference. So we try to get down there as soon as possible. Iowa State gets what looks to be a game-winning sack of Spencer Petras in the waning seconds of the fourth quarter. We make our way over to the elevator, and while we're waiting for the elevator, we hear the PA announce, or the official announce the situation with the penalty on Iowa State, Iowa moving 15 yards down the field. And before we can get from the elevators to somewhere we can actually see the game, the crowd goes wild. Iowa has moved the ball, to wherever they moved it down near the 30-yard line. I just take off sprinting to get back to our seats to where we can watch the last field goal. It goes wide left. We've got to sprint back to the elevators to go make that across the field through the rain. So that's a little, inside or behind the scenes of how our that final sequence unfolded for Iowa State beat reporters.
If Iowa State wouldn't have got penalized, they wouldn't have kicked it from there. I mean, and so.
Well, I thought the game was over. It was fourth down, or like time was going to run out. Like we just took off, and then I saw the flag. Exactly. I figured the flag was for holding. So no matter what, 10-second runoff, we're out of here.
That's some of the stuff that has worked against Iowa State in the past, and it's now this, and it worked in Iowa State. It worked in Iowa State's favor today. There weren't a whole lot of reviews. It didn't seem like, and I know Kirk was. Quite upset that there were a couple of them that were not reviewed, or there wasn't time to review them. But Iowa State got the benefit. Iowa State, those turned out in Iowa State's favor, I should say. Remember the last year at Texas Tech, the 62-yard field goal, walk-off field goal for the win? This could have been a field goal for the tie and go into overtime, heaven forbid. So maybe things are turning around for Iowa State in that respect. And plus, everybody knows about the freaky Septembers that Iowa State's had. Well, I think the pretty good money on Iowa State being 3-0 going into the Big 12. So maybe things are turning around for Iowa State. And during a season where there were little to no expectations after they lost 4 guys to the NFL draft. I don't know how many, 3 or 4 guys to the NFL draft. So this is it going. I think this could be a very intriguing. It already has intriguing season. And let's not forget Tyrell Brock, for guys' sakes, either. I mean, this guy, he rushed. What did he rush for? He had 100 yards, and that's probably the toughest 100-yard game he's ever had. I mean, it was tough to run against Iowa, but Iowa State continued to give it to him, and they were just pounding away with him, which was very, very interesting to me. And I think at times I was curious of what was going through the minds of Tom Manning and Matt Campbell, but everything they did today seemed to work. I mean, at least it turned out in the victory column.
Iowa State 10, Iowa 7 in the 69th Cy-Hawk game. And don't look now. Iowa State looks with Ohio on the schedule for next week at Jack Trice Stadium. The Cyclones look likely to be 3-0 heading into a game with a current top 25 team in Baylor, who, as we speak now, is down 3-0 to BYU, with a chance to go 4-0 and maybe be a top 25 type team heading into October with Kansas, Kansas beat West Virginia today. So that is not maybe going to be the cakewalk that it has been previously. But again, not to get ahead of ourselves, Iowa State still needs to take care of business against Ohio, and then who knows what happens against Baylor. But I guess my point is, Randy, to piggyback on what you said about Iowa State's struggles in September, is that none of that stuff has quite been as on the board or feel as realistic because of Iowa State losing this game. But usually you're coming out of
right.
week 2 in the Matt Campbell area deflated about where things are going. And if you'll remember, this weekend was what it was at the time week 1, but would have been week 2 in a normal year, was when they lost to Louisiana in 2020, the second weekend in September. So this has historically been a time where Iowa State's limping into their next game. Instead, they're kind of, firing off into that game. And now you're looking at that Baylor game as a big game, for more reasons than it being the Big 12 opener. So my point is, by winning this game, Iowa State keeps its ceiling high, its trajectory pointed upward, and the momentum for the team and for the program in a place that we have not seen in 8 years.
One more thing. Let's not forget that after Baylor, like you said, Iowa State's going to beat Ohio next week. But like you said, that give them momentum going into Baylor. And let's say things work out against Baylor, games and Ames. Let's say it works out. So that's 4-0, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. Obviously, that's 4-0.
What's the first college football playoff selection show?
That's 4-0 going to Kansas, dude. 4-0 going to Kansas. So, and I know Kansas beat Texas last year, but anyway,
and West Virginia today.
I'm intrigued about where this could be headed.
Iowa State's 2-0 for the first time since 2014, having beaten Iowa, getting Matt Campbell's first victory in the Cy-Hawk series. He's Randy Peterson. I'm Travis Hines. Thank you for listening and watching this Cyclone Insider podcast. We'll be back Monday with our normal radio show at 6 o'clock on KXNO. Be sure to check out DesMoinesRegister.com for all our coverage from Iowa City, as well as our colleagues, Alyssa Hurdle, Chad Leistico, and Kennington Smith. Lots and lots of Cy-Hawk coverage. We appreciate you watching, listening, and reading, and we will talk to you next time.